listening to the Marketing Personalities Podcast, a podcast for growth-minded entrepreneurs that serves up valuable insight and interviews about aligning your marketing strategy with your personality type. Because here's the deal. You shouldn't have to feel fake and salesy in order to grow your business. And you no longer have to. Your marketing strategy can feel good to implement and it can work. You can attract the right clients and customers to your business and grow your profits, all while staying true to who you naturally are. So in the name of honest business growth, bring your unique talents, perspectives, and personality to the table. And join us on this week's podcast episode to discover marketing that feels good for you. Welcome back to another episode of the Marketing Personalities Podcast. I'm Brit Kolo, and I'm here today with Jenny Bremer, owner of Remembered Practice. Jenny, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be on your podcast as a listener.
Yeah, and much more than a listener, let's be real. So
much more than that.
Jenny is a super special person in my life. Jenny is my counselor. So she's going to tell you about what she does and what Remembered Practice is. But just know, this is my counselor. This is the person who I get into a really safe and sacred space with and just let it all out and process and heal with. So this is a really, really interesting and special thing, I think, that we're doing today, Jenny. We're going to talk about Jenny's personality type and how she utilizes it in her marketing strategy and her business. And know that this is a really special person for me in my life. Like this is who I'm bringing to you today, which just makes my heart burst. Like it's just so incredible to bring you somebody so special and to know that, putting her here and allowing you to reach her as well as I have done, because it has been a complete life changer. I won't go into specifics, but Jenny knows and a few of my other people in my life know how big of a life changer Jenny has been for me. So yeah, that's who you're listening to today. And we're really here today specifically to discuss one personality type. We're not talking about a whole tribe of types. We're not talking about all of them. We're just talking about one type, and that is the INFP type, because that's Jenny's type. So she's here to give us some insight into that specific type. But before we dig into that, I want you to know Jenny a bit better. Jenny, you are incredible.
Yes.
Tell us who you are in the world.
Thank you. Yes. So, as you have said, my name is Jenny. I live in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and I own Remembered Practice. I consider my labels are always a funny thing. I'm always playing around with it, but I consider myself right now a holistic mind-body therapist. And so I just work with people to discover their truth, to rediscover their truth, remember their truth, and find their freedom in that. And I love it. It's such a great process. And I do that through a specific type of holistic mind-body counseling, body work, energy work, movement, and just like a hell of a lot of curiosity.
Yeah. And listeners, if you just picked up on that, if you know me, you might know that I live in Pennsylvania, and Jenny just says that she practices in Grand Rapids, Michigan, someplace I've never actually been in my entire life. So you might be wondering, wait a second, how does this work? Thankfully, Jenny does both work in person with people in Grand Rapids, and she does remote counseling sessions. So she and I will get on a Zoom call, and that's how we do counseling. And it's such a gift to me to not have to leave the safe space of my own home and be able to tap into and process and heal through a Zoom call. It's, again, life-changing. And so if that kind of came up like, wait, how does that work? Well, that's how it works. By the brilliance and magic of the internet, that's how we do our thing. So if you're not in Grand Rapids, you can also connect with Jenny. So that's cool. Jenny, tell us the rundown of how you got here. You work with your clients in many ways, essentially in the way that they really need in that time, in that moment. And so you have so much skill and knowing behind your practice, and that had to come from somewhere. So how did you get here? What's been going on?
Oh, so much. Always so much. I started this whole process by going to massage school, I think in 2009, graduated in 2010. I did all of that on the West Coast, moved back to Grand Rapids, and just kind of embarked on this journey, for lack of a better term, into myself. Really, like, what has fueled this business is my own growth and my commitment to my growth and my commitment to my truth. I mean, I have a lot of training. So I have massage training, myofascial release training, holistic counseling training. You know, I have like a conglomeration of all of these actual trainings, but really what brings it all together is my own personal work that I do with my practitioner. And I mean, that's why I'm here. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing. I got a taste of freedom and truth through all of that. And I was like, I know that I'm not the only person that needs this. I have to do this in the world. So that's it, kind of in a nutshell, of how I ended up here. And then just following that knowing of like, I don't know what this thing is, but I think it's the next step in my business and I'm going to do it. And yeah, I just kind of fall into these things that just feel right. And then I incorporate it in.
Fall or allowing. I see you allow things to flow through you so beautifully time and time again. And I think I've learned that a lot of that from you, the allowing and the taking the stance of the conduit, you know, like the hollow reed, if you will, and allowing whatever needs to flow through me. And I have 100%, now that I speak that out loud and kind of process it as you so well get me to do, I learned that from you. You modeled it and I was able to recognize, oh, wait, there's something there. I mean, honestly, like, yeah, we're talking about business here and we will talk about business here, and we are human.
I'm pretty sure we are.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I think so. So we are humans running businesses. And so anything that applies to this business applies to us as the human behind it. And anything that applies to us as the human behind it applies to our business. It's just one big, huge group hug. And it can get really, really fun when you lean into the surrender and the allowing and the flow of whatever needs to happen. And you do that beautifully.
Thank you for pointing that out to me, because I think you're right. I think there's so much more intention behind it, and saying that I've fallen into something isn't giving credit to that. Yeah, I'm just grateful that you pointed that out to me. Thank you.
Yeah. And thanks for showing it to me.
My pleasure.
So I've already kind of said your personality type is INFP. And I can't even go into that yet because we are both of the same tribe of diplomats. We're intuitive feelers. And I went into this when I talked to Rachel East, who is an INFJ, a few episodes back. But I want to bring it up again. As intuitive feelers, there's always something deeper. And you already hit on it, which was so funny. I kind of chuckled to myself. Labels are hard for us because there are always deeper things going on. And we know, even though you show up through your preferences as an INFP and I show up through my preferences as an ENFJ, and there's so much more to all of that. And we get it, right? Like there's just so much going on in one single human. But through your preferences, you do show up as an INFP. And I recognize you as one of the healthiest forms. Like I just see you embodying all of the goodness of an INFP so hard, like so good and so well.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. And you don't shy away from any of it. And the INFP is, to me, is such an interesting place in the personality types, like spectrum, and you hold strong there, and I dig it. I really, really like it.
I love it.
Yeah. So tell me, I mean, we didn't really speak about this beforehand, but what do you know about your personality type? And then I'll fill in the gaps. I'll let the listeners know exactly what we're dealing with here.
Well, yeah. So it's interesting when you ask me that question, it brings up a little bit of anxiety because I'm so attuned to other personality maps like the Enneagram, the 5 personality patterns. So even though I've worked with you and I'm doing my marketing through this personality system, I'm not as learned as I would like to say I am, but I know that I'm a great mediator. I know that I'm great at seeing every perspective. I know that I am totally an intuitive feeler, and I'm really good at sharing my truth. And like, I can't really like market from a place other than that. Like, that's the only place I really can be when I'm coming from a place of marketing.
Yes.
Because everything else feels just wrong, for lack of a better word. It just feels wrong.
Yeah. I mean, and you hit all of the most important parts there. So if you don't learn anything else, that's totally fine. You've got it.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah. For the listener, I know this is funny from my point of view. And I was thinking about this earlier today because I knew you were going to speak. I know that I have quite a few INFPs in my audience because I see them come through like my email list and stuff, and everything is categorized and all that, and where people click. But I don't have very many conversations with them. And I think it's because INFPs tend to be internal so much of the time. There's a lot of internal processing and things going on for an INFP. And while it might not happen verbally, they might not be the most verbal of processors. They are there, they are strong, and they are doing incredible things in the world. Like some of the most incredible things you could possibly imagine, they're being done by an INFP. You just might not hear about them all the time because they're internal, they're in there, they're in it, they're doing the work there. They're just so immersed. I see that. I see that in you. I see that in other INFPs, even though that they're not like showing up in my DMs all the time. I see that in them. So if you're listening and you are an INFP, I see you. I totally see you. And the other things that we know about the INFP, they're a diplomat. So everything that we know about the diplomat tribe, they're mission driven. They have to start with why. They are not going to get behind anything if they don't know why they're behind it. And they definitely love to dig in deeper, for sure. Now, specifically to the INFP, you tend to be, and this makes me smile just because it's so true, you tend to be poetic, kind, and altruistic, always eager to help a good cause. And I just have to stop there because like I don't know how else to just quickly explain who Jenny is other than like right there, super poetic.
Oh, so lovely.
So amazing with words. I wish I could write like you, kind, altruistic, and eager to help a good cause. So with all that said, and then I'm going to finally turn the mic back over to you. With all that said, based on that personality type, I give INFPs the suggestion that their best marketing strategy includes pairing their business effort with a charity, relief, or giving back effort. And that word charity freaks people out. So said in another way, INFPs do a really great job at sharing the wealth. Okay. And that doesn't necessarily mean giving their money away. It could mean donating money, but it could also mean seeking out opportunities to volunteer, giving back, donating items, offering pro bono work, offering a scholarship. So there are many ways to share the wealth, not just monetarily. But with all that said, Jenny, I would love for you to take us into how you are weaving in this best marketing strategy into how you actually market your business. How do you do this?
Yeah. So it took me a while to get there. I think it took me 5 months from when we first had our session together for me to figure out how I wanted to implement this into my business. And I knew I wanted to implement it. It wasn't like a thing that I had to do. It was just a matter of finding the right thing. And so we identified that my core values of my business are truth, freedom, growth, autonomy, and nature. And I was like, how am I going to incorporate nature into this like bodywork, holistic health, healing kind of practice? And like I said, it took me 5 months to get there. And I incorporate nature into that because for me and for a lot of people that I work with, it's a place of holding. It's a place they go to connect to themselves, to breathe again for some people.
Mm-hmm.
I remember one day opening a book that my friend gave me, and it's called You Are a Message. And I just opened it right to this page, and there were all of these trees on one side. And on the other side, it said, what if businesses planted trees and planted forests instead of wastelands? And I was like, oh my God, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to plant trees, and I don't know how, and I don't know what that's going to look like, but like, that's my thing. So I Googled something like, I don't know, trees and charity or something, just something ridiculous that I laugh at myself every time I think about it. And this thing came up. I think it was the first one, and it was called One Tree Planted. And they plant one tree for every $1 donated. So what I came up with was at the end of every month, I'm going to tally up every single service that I've done, and I'll donate $1 per service. And then for every new client, that new client session is actually at $5 that I donate. So it adds up pretty quickly, and I'm so excited about it. It's kind of like that last missing piece where I was like, I don't know how I'm going to incorporate this into my business. And it just fit it all together, just fit it right in there. So yeah, it's been really great. And it's been so fun to see people light up about, like, I talk to people all the time about pain, joy, growth, healing, like all kinds of things. And I don't see people light up in the way that they do when they talk about trees with me. So it's been really fun and exciting, and it's felt really good to give back to the earth in that way.
Yeah. So pairing that within what you know is happening in your business. So every time you attract a new client, you know that that's going to give 5 trees. That's going to plant 5 trees. And then every client session after that, it's going to plant another. And knowing that nature holds such a dear place in your heart, I can see how that can just give you this unspoken, probably even like subconscious, subliminal support when you are talking about what you do and who you serve, and allowing yourself and your business to be seen by new people. I can see how that can just like really bolster that support. How does that come up in conversation with your clients? How does that fit in? How do they even know that you do this? And why do you think they're so jazzed about it?
That's a great question. It just makes me smile so big every time I think about it. So as far as the conversation piece, every time I have a new client come in, either for a consultation or their first session, I just say, hey, just so you know, like I have this program, and if you decide to come on this journey with me, we're going to be planting trees together. Like maybe not physically, but like this is a thing that we're going to do. And I also share it in my marketing. So most of my marketing I do on Instagram, and at the end of every month, when I've tallied everything up, I make a post about it. And sometimes I share just my gratitude and enthusiasm in doing this work with people and being able to plant trees because of it. And sometimes I share about climate change or like what tree rings signify to me. You know, I tend to get pretty creative with it, and that's been really fun. And I think, why do people get so jazzed about it? People apparently love nature just as much as I do, and they love trees. I mean, people share stories with me about how their like trees talk to them, and they have relationship with these plants. And I think that's so beautiful, because so much of the work that I do with people is about how we relate not only to ourselves, but to our external world. And, I think now is a time more than ever where we need to be really conscious of what is going on in our external world and how are we affecting that. So I think it's just really bringing out that awareness in people and that passion in people, and encouraging them to be more conscious in how they're showing up, not only for themselves and their relationships, but how their inner world is also being reflected in their external world. And man, if a tree can get them there, I'm all about it.
Yeah, it touches so many pieces of it. Like there are so many underlying messages here. It's you as the business owner feeling great about talking about your services, because once someone commits to working with you, honestly, the world is impacted because you're planting a tree. So it's happening for them and as one of your clients, I can say when I've seen those monthly updates on how many trees were planted that month, just in that month, let alone overall, it's very easy for me to see like, okay, I showed up for myself. Here's a very tangible example of how that bettered the world. Sometimes in our unhealthiest moments, we feel like that's selfish, like it's not worth it or whatever. And we don't know how this is impacting anyone other than ourselves. And sometimes it doesn't feel like enough, unfortunately. It's a human experience sometimes. But then you give us this beautiful, tangible example of how actually this is absolutely helping the greater good. So thanks for showing up. And we're all growing. Like you just said, you're growing, you're processing, you're healing. You are guiding us as your clients to grow and heal and process and become stronger. And through that work together, we're allowing trees. I mean, we all went through sixth grade science, right? Like we know how important a tree is in our universe. We are now allowing that to grow as well and process the things that it needs to process to make our earth whole. I mean, it's
mind blowing.
Good. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Like I have to stop talking about it now because it's just so much and so good.
Yeah, it's great. The other thing I want to add is scientists have said in a study that the number one thing that we can do right now to fight and hopefully reverse global warming is to plant more trees, because they suck in the carbon and they give off the oxygen. And so it's just a no-brainer for me. So just one other exciting element to that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can get behind that, obviously. And I think it's really cool to showcase how you're showing up in your truth and naturally attracting other people who also feel connected to nature and trees. You don't have to try at that. It's not like you've said freaking Instagram post like, I only want to work with people who care about trees. Like that's not what's happening. It's you showing up in your truth and your natural human and owning that, and the right people being attracted to that energy. That's how this works. And it's a beautiful example of that.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing I've taken away from working with you is the fact that I can show up as myself, and there will be people out there who will say, I want that. I want to be a part of that. Or even they might say like, everything else out here doesn't work for me and I don't want anything to do with that. And this thing right here, I don't even fully understand it, but it resonates with me and I want to be a part of it. And that has been the biggest thing to affect me and my marketing and my business. It's given me so much permission to just show up and be myself and express my truth and know and trust that really, really, really beautiful, great things will come from it. So that's been really great for me to experience. And I thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have a couple things. I want to give one more example because your example does include donating dollars, which can feel really great for an INFP. That's awesome. And sometimes I receive emails like, Brit, you're telling me to donate money, which I'm not. That's not what I said. Your best strategy includes pairing business effort with charity, giving back, relief efforts. That doesn't always include money, but they read it as if I've told them to give some of their money away. And if you're brand new or you've had a hard year, that can trigger you. I get it. So sometimes I get emails of like, that is great and I can't do that. So if you're an INFP or you know an INFP and you're just like, I just don't understand how I could possibly do that. Here's another example. So I was at an event recently, and one of the people in my group was an INFP. And we were talking about this specifically. And she was kind of in that same space. Like, I just don't understand like how this could even work with what I do. She's a pretty premium level career and interview coach. And it wasn't a straightforward answer. And what we ended up realizing was she could set kind of a boundary for herself. So when she signed up for new clients, she could then offer a pro bono session for someone who she knew that they needed her, but couldn't afford her. She always had this really soft spot for people that needed her, but just really was not in the place to hire her. And she can't build a business only serving those people. That's just not going to work. But as an INFP, she can set a certain boundary. As soon as she crosses over that 4 new client finish line, she gets to go and gift a pro bono session for someone who she wants to gift it to. And when I was explaining that was an option, she just lit up. She's like, oh my gosh, that makes me want to go find 4 new people just so I can give a pro bono session.
So interesting.
Yeah. So that's an option too. That's another great example. If you're an INFP, what you might be able to incorporate into your strategy. Get creative. It doesn't have to look any certain way. Just identify how it's going to feel great for you to show up in your business and serve a greater cause. So now, Jenny, I have a question. We've talked about this in the past, and I want to kind of get inside your brain a little bit here and see how you cope with this. So I know that INFPs tend to be, like I said, a pretty internal, lots of things going on. I mean, you're processing a lot. You've got a lot of intuitive abilities. You've got lots of feelings usually. And sometimes when you're showing up on social media as an INFP, it might feel, I think sometimes you come up to the rub of like, do I share all of this? Like I'm dealing with a lot right now, as we all are, but especially as an INFP, a really strong feeler, it can feel like, dang, like I want to share some of this because I know it's going to help people, but do I share all of it? That feels not right. So how do you balance for yourself and for your audience? You're sharing the things that we need to know about so we can come closer to you and heal and process things, but also holding a really comfortable, safe boundary for yourself so you're not oversharing your own journey. How do you do that?
That's a great question, only because I'm still figuring that out. What I have found for myself, though, is that I'm a human just like everyone else looking at my marketing and my Instagram. And most healing for humans comes through sharing. So I've had to be really mindful in my sharing because, so much of what I do with people is about self-expression and expressing your truth and living in your truth and from your truth. And I feel like if I were to not be open about my own process and truth to a certain degree, I wouldn't necessarily be leading by example. I wouldn't be honest in my marketing. And to an extent, I don't know that I would be the right fit to lead people down this path. So it's hard to balance it for sure. I feel into it a lot. So I feel into like, okay, this feels okay to share. And I can kind of tie in like all of these other things that I do with people, like work around unconscious belief systems and emotional fluency or movement or whatever. But this thing feels really private and really fragile. And that's the thing that I'm going to keep to myself. So I've had to use a lot of awareness and practice and trial and error. Sometimes I share things. I'm like, wow, that's way too, I'm going to delete that one because I think I overshared on that one. And that's okay. I can always delete it.
Yeah.
And sometimes I share ones that I'm like, oh, I could have gone just a little bit further. Like I held back on that one. I could have gone a little bit further. So yeah, I do a lot of feeling into it.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good advice for an INFP because while that might not make sense to, let's say, an ISTJ who it just doesn't operate that way, an INFP is like, got you. I totally know what you mean. I can do that.
Yes.
And I get that as well. Have you ever shared something that felt uncomfortable to share and then received an incredibly positive response that surprised you?
Yes. Like all the time. I will say that sharing the movement aspect of my practice was when I really started feeling that. That was the scariest part to share of what I do. And I mean, like right away, people were like, what is this? What are you doing? Tell me more. How do I do this? How'd you get started? And I find the more and more I share my process with movement, the more and more vulnerable it feels. And the more and more people are like, they just want more of it. So that was really surprising to me because I was pretty sure people were going to be like, that's weird, unfollow, don't want anything to do with that. And it's been the exact opposite. It's been like completely embraced, which has been an interesting learning experience for me. So yeah, that aspect of my business, I was very surprised about the way that it was received.
Yeah. If the listener hasn't followed you on Instagram yet and hasn't seen these movement, what they are videos, tell us about what these things are. Like it's called intuitive movement. You showcase it on your Instagram and why? Like, what is this thing? Because you're right. Like the moment you see it and you've never seen it before, you're like, I don't get it. But yet I'm like leaning into it. Right? Like I'm not getting it and leaning out. I'm like not understanding and leaning way in. So tell us what this is.
Yeah. So the interesting thing about what you just said is that like 9 times out of 10, people show up and they say, I saw your movement stuff on Instagram and I just thought it was really freaking weird, but also like I find myself wanting to do it. And I'm like, great, you can think it's weird all you want, but if you resonate with it, that's all I need to know to get started.
Yeah.
Yeah. So intuitive movement is basically allowing the body to speak. So there's a lot of therapy where there's a lot of talking and working with the mind. And I'm just incorporating that mind body connection piece. So unwinding the stories, so much of the stories that we assign to ourselves or take on or are assigned to us as we grow up are embodied in us, in our nervous system, in our tissue. And talking can only get you so far. Talking can get you really far, but sometimes language is also really limiting. So really getting in the body and tuning in and moving in a way that the body wants to move is allowing it to speak and process. And it's another way for you to express yourself and express your truth. It's another way for you to process emotions or a relationship or a struggle, or maybe you have a decision that's feeling really hard for you to make. Well, what if you put movement to that? Like, what if you put movement to that feeling of struggle, or if you put movement to the anger or whatever it is you're feeling, what would that movement look like? And what can that movement tell you about yourself or how you move through this thing? Or even like what belief systems are at the root of that. So it's a really powerful tool I'm learning, but another tool to just incorporate the whole you and not just your mind. And it's pretty profound.
It is profound.
I love it.
It's so profound. Me too. When you said the part about how talking it out and using words, it gets you far, but it doesn't always get you fully released. And there where you need to be to heal and process something that's going on, whatever it is, I just felt like this wave of like fresh air over me, because I really know that to be true. When you talk about mind, body, soul connection, the mind is using all the words. She's got a lot of words. The soul is moving through all sorts of things, and the body has the body. So when it's trying to tell you something, it might show up with pain, and which happens for me. We know this. This is what we talk about in my counseling sessions. Welcome to Brit's counseling sessions. Pain shows up for me, and that is a really good indicator that I must move my body. Like, I love to talk. Y'all know I love to talk. I can find all the words all the time. And sometimes that keeps me from tapping into what my body needs to say. And so this intuitive movement practice that you've introduced me to has really opened up a lot. So you have been doing this, and then you started sharing it on Instagram. And I think you and I had a conversation way back about, we want to make sure that you're not back to that, sharing too much or when it feels too fragile. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think sometimes you do your intuitive movement practice. Sometimes you record it, sometimes you don't. And when you do record it, you don't necessarily post it right away. It's something that you record, and then later on, once you feel like you've kind of processed through that, then you might come back and share it. So again, it's like a bit of protection around this really deep stuff that you're working through, and still allowing it to help your audience. Is that what you continue to do, or has that changed?
Yeah, so I did that a lot in the beginning. And I would say now I don't save it as often as I used to. The ones that do feel particularly vulnerable, or like, ooh, there's something in that, I'll save it and watch it as many times as I need to get the information that I need to get from it. And then once I feel like I've sort of processed all that I can from that movement, if I feel like I want to share it, then I will. But most often I record something and I share it, because I'm at a point in my own process where I think a lot of people actually that I work with are at this point where like, we're just sick of hiding. Like, we're sick of keeping these parts of ourselves at bay and only expressing these certain aspects of who we are. And I'm just sick of that. Like, that doesn't like the Jenny that I am today. Like, I don't want anything to do with that. Like, I want to show up. I want to show who Jenny is. And I've shared some pretty vulnerable stuff. I mean, I have intuitive movement practices on my Instagram where I'm sobbing, and, I've questioned a lot as to whether that's too much, or is this going to appear like I'm seeking some kind of validation? And the honest answer is no. Like, I wouldn't take my clients through anything that I haven't gone through myself. And I feel like I should be sharing some of this stuff. Like, this is what real healing looks like. Like, it's not always yoga and meditation and crystals. And I mean, those things are all great and have a time and a place and a purpose. But there's also so much more. And there's so much more. Like, the deeper you go into it, there's so much more. And I want to show that. So I want to show the potential that we all have within ourselves. And sometimes it takes somebody else to hold that space for you to discover that within yourself. But everything that I share, everything that I teach, everything that I know, everybody else knows and can share and can teach too. It's already there. We all know it.
Yeah, I think two things you just nailed for me is in the beginning, when you were first starting to share these, you experimented and allowed yourself space to share it when it felt right to share. And then the more you've practiced it, you probably just became a lot quicker because of practice, knowing if it was something that you wanted to share or not. And nail on the head when you said, as long as you know within yourself, it's not being posted for validation purposes, it's being posted to serve and help and uncover and showcase that, like, this is another way that you as an audience member can process. That's for sure the key. And I think that that's why people respond so well to it. It's so genuine. It's so you. It's so Jenny. It's so true. And there's no denying it. There's no denying that. So cool. I cannot wait to hear from our INFPs. I know you guys don't reach out as often as other people, other types. I want to hear from you so badly. So if you are an INFP listening to this, I want to know if it resonated, how it resonated, what else you have to add to the conversation. Please come over to Instagram at Marketing Personalities. Tell me what your type is. Tell me that you're an INFP and tell me what you thought about this. In a direct message, totally private, tell me what's going on here. I really, really want to hear from you. And Jenny, I want to know, what would you tell a fellow INFP as she's navigating this marketing thing? What advice would you give to her?
Oh, man. I would just say, be you, share your heart, don't hold back. Your truth is enough. It can be easy. Yeah, just be yourself. Just share yourself.
Yep. Yes, please do that. That's so good.
And then tag me in it so I can see it.
Yeah, and then tag Jenny. Her Instagram name is Remembered Practice. Okay, so before we go, could you please tell the listeners where they can find you online?
Yes. So my website is rememberedpractice.com. You can find me on Instagram at Remembered Practice. I'm on Facebook as Remembered Practice. Yeah, those 3 places.
Okay. And let's be super, super clear. I mean, I've been pretty forthcoming with this, right? Jenny is my counselor. I want the listener to be able to get on your calendar and work with you if they're feeling called to do so right now. And if this is really speaking to you and you're like, all right, I need this. We've put the link right in the show notes. So if you're in Apple Podcasts and if you're in Stitcher, if you're in YouTube, wherever you are listening to this right now, the link to get straight onto Jenny's calendar for a free consultation. You're not going to spend any money on this. You can just speak to Jenny, just speak to her one-on-one. The link is right there. It's super easy to find. I'll say it right now, so you can type it in if you need to. It's kind of long, but the link is right there. There's nothing between you and clicking that link right now. Okay. So it's rememberedpracticeschedule.as.me/remote consultation. It's so easy just to get on the calendar. And if you're feeling like that's the right next move for you as a human, go ahead and do that, please. I am certainly glad and grateful. I can't even explain the gratitude that I have that I did that so many months ago and just got on Jenny's calendar, because it's changed my life. So Jenny, thank you so much for being here and spending time with me and sharing your goodness with my audience.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, so good. So go check Jenny out at Remembered Practice. She's on Instagram at Remembered Practice. And of course, as always, to find a marketing strategy that feels good to you, visit marketingpersonalities.com. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Marketing Personalities Podcast. Now it's time to connect your marketing strategy to your personality type. Go to marketingpersonalities.com/MPP to download your marketing personality type full report. Use the code MPP at checkout to get $10 off. And that's a super special code for podcast listeners as a way to say thank you for being here. In your full report, you'll learn about your personality type, how it relates to the work you do, what your best marketing strategy includes so you can start implementing it right away, what your worst marketing strategy includes so you can avoid it, and so much more. Go to marketingpersonalities.com/MPP to get your full report and use the code MPP at checkout to receive $10 off your purchase. And one more thing before you skip on to the next podcast. Would you please share this episode with your entrepreneur friends who also need to feel good about their marketing strategies? Take a quick screenshot of your podcast app right now and share it out via text, Facebook, or my favorite, Instagram. Remember to tag me at Marketing Personalities in the photo so I can be sure to send you a huge high five and thank you for sharing the love. This podcast is edited and produced by the Podcast Engineers. They're pretty great, and you can find them at podcastengineers.com. That's all for now. Thanks as always for listening, and I'll catch you back here next week on the Marketing Personalities Podcast. Love ya. Bye.